Good morning. Kate here, bringing you this week's Monday Mission. And it's Valentine's Day. So I hope you have a wonderful day and that you share some love with some of those people in your life that are special to you. So this week, we are going to talk about how to have better thoughts. Okay, so I did a poll on Instagram and Facebook of some topics that I thought might be helpful or that you may want to hear about. And most of you chose how to have better thoughts, right? So some of the other topics were permission slips from a life coach. So I think I'll do that for another Monday Mission. Another one was self-discipline. So I think we'll do that one. And then what was the other one? Oh, listening to your intuition. So I think we'll do that for one of the weeks too. But this week, it's going to be how to have better thoughts. Okay. So why do we want to have better thoughts? Right? Like why do I talk so much about thoughts? Okay. And if you remember, what I've taught through all the videos here is that our thoughts create our feelings, right? So if we want to feel better, if we're feeling crappy a lot of the time, the reason for that is our thoughts, okay? And so there are some things that we can do to have better thoughts, which will lead to better feelings, right? Words matter. This is really important to understand. Words really, really matter. Words that we say to others and words that we say to ourselves. So I'm going to say some thoughts, common thoughts that I've had that you might have, and I want you to just think about what feeling comes up for you when you hear these thoughts, okay? First one is I hate my body. Okay, even if that's not a thought you've had about your own body or about yourself, what do you feel when you hear that? When you hear someone say or realize that someone's thinking or remember a time when you thought, I hate my body. You feel shameful, right? Just embarrassed. Okay. What feelings come up for you when you hear that? I'll never lose weight. I've tried everything. I'll never lose weight, right? That can lead to feeling defeated, okay? I'm so overwhelmed. I know we've all said this, right? And I know it feels really super true that you're so overwhelmed, but it is just a thought, actually. And when you have that thought, what does it lead to? It probably leads to feelings of anxiousness and worry and I'll never get it all done and right, just kind of spiral. I can't believe my husband did that again. Right? What does that lead to? Anger, frustration, resentment. We talked a lot about resentment, right? I'll never be enough. I'm not enough. I'll never be able to do it all. I'm never enough, right? Leads to maybe feelings of hopelessness, right? I always mess up. I'm such an idiot. What does that lead to? Shame, embarrassment, right? Some similar feelings there. So you can see the thoughts that we are having, even just listening to those. If you haven't had those specific thoughts, you can imagine what thoughts or what feelings are created from having those thoughts. Okay, so we know that we can't just jump from those thoughts to the exact opposite or the polar opposite, super duper positive thought, right? Our brain still has to believe the thought that we tell it. Okay, so remember what we're trying to do is create a new sledding hill. So those thoughts that I just stated, if you've had them several times, they become a belief. Okay, so remember, a belief is just a thought that has been repeated. It becomes a really fast, efficient sledding hill in the brain. So in order to stop that thought, that sledding hill from being so efficient, we need to create a new one and start using that sledding hill. But we can't do that with a thought that, again, doesn't feel believable to our brain, right? We have to choose a thought that at least feels a little bit more believable. There has to be some belief to it. So we can't just jump from I hate my body to I love my body, right? We can't jump from I'm not enough, I'll never be enough to I'm amazing, right? We can't jump from I'm overwhelmed to I'm fine, right? Which I think a lot of us try to do, right? We just try to tell ourselves we're fine. But that thought of I'm overwhelmed is actually still going. It's still the one that we believe. We don't believe the I'm fine thought. So we can't jump, right? We need to create at least a slightly more believable thought, and then we can change that to a new thought, right? So one of the things I think I'd shared before was the thought, so I'm just giving you how we might modify a thought. Okay, so if you start with I hate my body, I can't jump to I love my body, right? So I might get to the neutral thought of I have a body, still believable. My brain will believe that, but it doesn't feel as awful as saying, I hate my body, right? And then we can kind of jump to the next thought and the next one and the next one until we're believing the thought that we truly want to believe. All right, so how do we do this? How do we change our thoughts? How do we have better thoughts? We want to, first of all, we want to be honest with ourselves as far as what the thought is, okay? So if you've heard some of these and you're like, oh, I would never say that to myself. Listen, just be honest with yourself, right? We all say some horrible things. We have some thoughts that we wouldn't share with others, right? And I just want to let you know that you are not alone. So just be honest with yourself. Don't try to hide from the thought. If you have the thought, you have the thought. It is what it is. And we can change it, right? So be honest with yourself about what the thoughts actually are, okay? And then we can do something that I call thought modifiers, right? These are things that we can add on to the thought that help our brain believe it a little bit more, and it lessens the feeling that comes with it, right? It doesn't lead to those feelings of shame, those feelings of guilt, embarrassment, defeat, anxiety that we talked about in the beginning, okay? So let's take the thoughts that we did the examples with. So thought is, I hate my body. How can we modify that? I love adding the words, and it's okay, to a thought, okay? I hate my body, and it's okay. I'm working on it. I'll get there one day, right? It just adds this relief to the thought. I'm not denying the thought. I'm aware that it's still there. It's still coming up for me, but I'm modifying it so that it feels a little bit better, right? Because what does that feel, or what feeling does that maybe lead to? Maybe hope that I'll get there, right? Some compassion for myself, right? Instead of blame and shame and embarrassment for having that thought. The thought, I'll never lose weight. So a modifier that we could use there is, this is just a thought. I'm having a thought. I'm just having a thought that I'll never lose weight. And that reminds us that our thoughts are not facts, right? So add the modifier of, this is just a thought. I'm having a thought that, fill in the blank. I'm so overwhelmed. That's another one that is just a thought. So you can add that modifier onto it. You hear yourself say to yourself, I'm so overwhelmed. Oh, I'm just having a thought that I'm so overwhelmed. Okay. And that just takes the pressure off, right? Because if you're saying to yourself over and over again, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so overwhelmed, it leads you to feeling what? Defeated, anxious, just frantic, right? It leads to worry. And then you're not in a place where you can get anything done, right? Like you can be productive. So then nothing's taken off of your to-do list. So your result is that you are overwhelmed because now you have 15 things to do, right? So it's this big cycle. So if you can modify the thought, I'm so overwhelmed, and just say, I'm just having a thought that I'm overwhelmed. This is just a thought, right? And then you can come from a place of choice. I can choose to believe this thought, or I can choose to have a different one, or modify it further, whatever the case is. But then it just adds that on so you don't have to believe that thought as absolute fact. I can't believe my husband did that again. I can't believe he did that again. Right? A modifier here might be, I wonder why he did that again. Right? Curiosity instead of judgment, right? If we're curious and we ask ourselves why this happened again, or he didn't do what he was supposed to do, or did do something that you asked him to do, and just ask why, right? Be curious there. So I wonder why he did that again or didn't do that again, right? I always mess things up. Yeah, sometimes I do. That might be the modifier there, right? Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Because it's true, right? We all mess up sometimes. And a lot of times we don't. Okay, but to say things like, I always mess up. I'm always an idiot. I always make stupid mistakes, right? Leads to those feelings that aren't productive. They don't serve you. There's no benefit to having that thought. Having that thought, I always mess up, does not help you not mess up the next time. So why are we having it? Okay, so let's modify it. I always mess up. Yeah, sometimes I do. And sometimes I don't. And then your brain can even start thinking about the times that you didn't mess up, right? So modify it. Again, we're not jumping to the exact opposite of the thought, but we can modify it so it feels better, right? How did those thoughts feel when I said them to you? When you heard those? When you heard, yeah, sometimes I mess up. When you heard, I wonder why he did that, right? When you heard, and it's okay. What feelings came up with that? Much better, right? Feels much better than the thoughts and feelings we started off with. Okay, so I want to give you an example of how this actually played out with one of my clients. So she was having a hard time getting her brain to believe that she could start small. Okay, so lots of overwhelm here, lots of I have to get these 1,000 things done, right, in order to be considered productive, in order to get this result that I want, right? And her brain was having a really hard time believing that she could just start small, whether it's just starting with one task or it's just starting with 15 minutes of something. And I really appreciated her honesty because she was like, my brain's not going to believe that. So there's no point in even practicing that new thought, right? It's just going to be a waste of time because her brain's secretly going to be there. Nope, that's not true. That's not true. You can't start small, right? So she knew her brain wasn't going to believe it. So what we came up with, and what she came up with, I just left space for her. I explained how thoughts work and how we could modify them. And then she came up with, I am learning to start small. And what that does for her is that allows her to, sometimes she does start small and sometimes she might not, right? And she's not going to beat herself up for it now because the thought is, I'm learning to do it. When we're learning to do something, we're not going to get it right all the time, right? We're going to go back to the old ways. And so she gave herself some grace and some compassion and found a thought that her brain can actually believe. And so now she's practicing that thought. I am learning to start small, right? So you could add that to any thought that you have. I am learning to, right? And modify it. So I just thought that was a really great example of how it kind of played out in one of our sessions and how it works in real life, right? So I hope that's a helpful example. So your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to start modifying your thoughts this week. Add a modifier on, right? Recognize what the thoughts are, modify it in some way that feels better. Understand that you're not going to be able to jump from this thought to the exact opposite of that thought, right? And just see what modifiers, play around, see what feels better. Our journal prompt for the week is going to be, I want you to write out a thought and then ... add a modifier to it, right? Play around with a few and see what feels better. And then once you land on one that feels better and that your brain believes, you can start practicing that one and building up that sledding hill. Okay, so that's your mission and the journal prompt for the week. As always, share with me anything that comes up with you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.